Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Hard Count. I'm Michael Emami, and I recently had the opportunity to speak with St. Joseph Regional High School's linebacker Aj Fricchione. And if that school sounds familiar, it's because I recently interviewed, or actually a long time ago interviewed, one of his teammates, Peter Shue, plays safety. I had a great conversation with AJ about that and his experience with him as a teammate here on this episode too. So that was also a great aspect to the interview with him. Fricchione is a member of the 2023 class and currently stands at 6'0" and 200 pounds. And he exhibits great speed and vision and great pursuit skills as well as great physicality. In discussing his training regimen, him and I discussed his discipline on his diet as he balances both football and wrestling and how he trains for both sports, and kind of how disciplined he is involving kind of losing, gaining weight, and kind of his meal plan and all that surrounding it, as well as more on this episode. And as I said earlier, we had a conversation about his teammate Peter Shue too. All right, everybody, here is AJ Fricchione. Hope you guys enjoy this one. I know I had interviewed Peter Shue, one of your teammates.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible story there, obviously. First
Yeah.
off, I want to ask, what is your experience like playing with him as a teammate and having him as a teammate with that backstory he's got?
I've only been with Pete for about 2 years now, and I really believe Pete is one of the hardest working kids I know. Seeing him at practice every day, it's just really inspiring to see someone that young and that athletic and work so hard. I believe that Peter should have anything that comes his way, and I think he will have a great opportunity for college football and maybe farther than that.
Yeah.
And I just think Peter's an all-around great kid and one of the hardest workers in the room for sure.
Yeah, that's obviously awesome to hear. And talking about you, you seem like a pretty darn hard worker. I mean, you multi-sport athlete, and obviously between wrestling and football, do you play any other sports, or is those the two that you go with?
I football and wrestling are the only things I do now, but in middle school I used to do lacrosse. But for high school, I'm just wrestling and football.
Right. So tell me how wrestling's been going so far. Is your football season off till spring? Is that how New Jersey's doing it?
Actually, New Jersey, I think we're starting up regular time in the summer, but wrestling is springtime this year. They canceled it back to March and April.
Okay, all right, yeah. So what are you kind of doing to train for your football season? I don't know if football and wrestling training is kind of if they're a little bit interchangeable or if there's a connection between the two. How's that work?
Yeah, so now I just started wrestling again, so I'm mainly lifting and running and doing all speed work I can since that's basically all I could do for now until we get our pads on. But
Right.
I'm just working out as hard as I can, staying on the mat, wrestling every day, and lifting as much as I can. And then the speed work comes with it also.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, obviously. And so, kind of getting more into the football side of things, I see here you got last year's highlights up. You got pretty darn good vision, good size. I think you're 6'0", 200. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
6'0", 200. So you're a pretty big guy, pretty big in the linebacker area as well. Good size for it, good speed for it. I wanted to ask, what's your experience been at St. Joseph Regional?
I love the school. It's a great school. The football program is one of the best things I love about it. The teammates, the coaches, everything. They're all about the school. Everyone's for them, the team. No one's really selfish on that football field, and everyone just wants to do it for the team. I don't really see anyone that just plays for themselves.
Right. Yeah, and so obviously that's obviously an important trait. And so when you look at kind of yourself here in terms of your development through the program, from obviously you as a kid to through high school now, how has it been like? How have you kind of developed, changed, or grown in size and speed and shape? How have you kind of developed yourself in that regard?
It was really difficult to change schools an hour away like St. Joe's and meeting a lot of new people that I've never met in my life. So it was basically like restarting. And I believe it's one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I've made so much progress in the past 2 years than I think I've ever had in my life.
Really?
And with the size and all that, after wrestling season, I was 170 pounds. And then I was just on a bulking diet, which was consisting of about 4,000 calories a day and lifting. And it just really helped me bulk up to 30 more pounds to 200.
Yeah, and how strict are you on those diets? Because obviously, I know that there are athletes that really kind of follow those to the T. So how strict were you? Were you kind of on it? Did you have like a list plan out for you? Did you kind of mark the foods you ate and stuff like that? How'd you kind of go about doing that?
Yeah, I had a shopping list that I would change every week. So I would eat the same foods for 1 week and then change it up. And I would write everything I ate and I can like write down all the calories I consumed. And then once I hit 200, I was like, I think this is where I want to be, because I don't want to get too heavy for the wrestling season
Right.
because I have to wrestle 195 pounds. So I think I'm in a good weight range for now.
Right, right. Yeah, and kind of going off that, obviously, we talk about with a lot of kids that they kind of want to either get bigger or stronger or faster or whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about how you went from, I think you said 170 to 200. That's 30 pounds, which is
Yes,
obviously a
correct.
lot to put on in kind of a short period of time like that. So, what's your recommendation for kind of kids if they're kind of going on a strict diet? They want to be disciplined. They want to gain this weight. They want to gain the strength and speed and agility. What would your recommendation be to them?
I think it's all just dedication. If you put your mind to it, you could do whatever you want, no matter how tough it is to eat that much food in a day and all those calories. I just think if you want to be as big as you want to be, you could definitely put your mind to and do it and just lift as hard as possible, and you could go anywhere you want.
Right, right. Yeah, and we kind of look at the discipline side of things there, but tell me a little about kind of your academic life. What do you kind of do to balance sports and school?
Usually I do my homework before wrestling because after school we end around 2 o'clock, and wrestling or football practice starts at 3 o'clock. So I have an hour to do my homework before practice starts up, and I just try to get as much as I can done. And then once I get home, I finish my homework, and then I work out with either running or lifting or anything like that.
Right, right. Yeah, and so kind of who inspires you? Do you have any role models as a professional athlete or as a collegiate athlete? Who kind of inspires you?
I think Ray Lewis is one of my biggest inspirations because that guy is just such a hard worker, and he's one of the greatest middle linebackers of all time. And I just love his work ethic, and he's just a great football player.
Yeah, yeah, definitely Hall of Fame caliber right there. And so, kind of in talking about Ray Lewis, obviously, and kind of your improvements in that comparison or how you look up to him, what do you feel like you're doing right now to kind of get prepared for the season in terms of specifically football related mindset? Have you gone over any schemes with your coach? Have you been looking at anything in terms of development within that regard?
I just feel like after this season, I just really want to get a lot stronger than I was this previous year, because as playing a middle linebacker, outside linebacker, you have to take on those linemen, those big guys, the fullbacks. You just got to be stronger than them to shed that block. So I think that's one of my main keys for this year is to get stronger.
Okay, yeah, very, very cool. And so, have you heard from any colleges yet? Have you been in contact with anyone to this point?
For football, not really, but wrestling I have.
Okay, who have you heard from to this point?
I've heard from Rutgers for wrestling, Columbia for wrestling, and Duke for wrestling.
Oh wow, those are very very good academic schools. That's pretty
Yes.
incredible. Yeah, and so tell me a little about kind of your family life. How have your parents influenced you?
My parents really are a huge part of my life because they dedicated everything they had to take me to school an hour away and help me with all my sports and provide everything I have. They're the biggest people I look up to now.
Wow, that's obviously that's great to hear. And so, what's kind of the first thing that you want to, in terms of football related? What's kind of the first thing you would want a college to know about you for football if they were going to take you?
I want a college to know that I'm a very versatile player. I can play middle linebacker, outside linebacker, safety, fullback. I could do mainly anything on that field, but that's all I want coaches to know is how hard I'll work, and I could play any position that they put me at.
Yeah, that's obvious. That's great. Obviously, good versatility there. And so, kind of reflecting on your career to this point, what's kind of been the best moment for you?
In my sports career
Yeah,
at St. Joe's,
in your sports career at St. Joe's, yeah, it would be football related.
um, I think it was beating Bergen Catholic last year. It was a really great feeling, and like that's our biggest rivalry in North Jersey is that school. So beating them was really an exciting and electrifying feeling,
Right.
as they're one of the top schools in the state.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's obviously great to hear. And so, do you have any hobbies outside of football?
I like to play. I mean, I like to lift a lot and run, but I also like to ride quads and do like country stuff because like fishing, all that. It's just nice and fun to do.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And so I asked this as kind of a fun question, but if you were to get drafted by an NFL team, what would be your preferred team you'd want to get drafted by?
The New York Giants.
New York Giants. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, thanks so much for coming on, AJ. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. You have a good one. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. That was AJ Fricchione out of St. Joseph Regional High School in New Jersey. If you'd like to contact AJ, his Twitter account is at AJ Fricchione, and that's spelled AJFRICCHIONE. And I'll be sure to post his huddle link and information below as well. Special thanks again to AJ for coming on. Really appreciate discussing the stuff with him involving his team and what he kind of does in terms of training, as well as his teammate Peter Shue. Also, if you'd like to contact me, my Twitter account is at Emami Michael. My YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe to that as well. Both my Instagram and Facebook are at The Hard Count with Michael Emami, so likes and follows to those would be greatly appreciated too. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks so much for listening. This has been The Hard Count. Do you have what it takes to go D1?